They spent how much? Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 most expensive video games ever made.
Who the hell's Rodrigo?
I don't know, man. Thanks.
Somebody's gotta go find him.
For this list, we're taking a look at games that required massive investment to be developed, promoted, and manufactured. Some of these titles justified such an extortionate budget, becoming commercial and critical successes, while others received far more negative reactions from audiences.
Phew! That's what happens when you mix C4 with a bean burrito.
Also, bear in mind that many of the quoted figures are best estimates, as companies are often unwilling to release their exact spending figures. We're also not drawing a line between marketing and development budgets, because companies are equally nebulous about those figures as well. Similarly, all numbers are from the time of the game's release, and would most likely be higher once adjusted for current US inflation.
Say what you want about Americans, but we understand capitalism. You buy yourself a product and you get what you pay for.
Number 10, Deadpool.
I've got my top designers banging away on a script right now. As soon as it's ready, we'll send it right over.
Script?
While this $100 million beat-em-up featuring the Merc with a Mouth wasn't quite as bad as the character's first big screen appearance, it still lacked the type of gameplay you would expect from such an expensive title. Wade Wilson's typically vulgar fourth-wall breaking humor was abundant, however, even poking fun at the developers and the shortcomings of the game.
Hello?
Peter! Hey, I was just running around my game and all of a sudden I noticed that some shit was f***ed up.
As much as Deadpool mocks gaming cliches, it doesn't hide the fact that many of those same tropes are present in almost every lifeless level. This all stemmed from a notably tumultuous existence. High Moon Studios employees were fired during development, and the game was pulled from online services after release. Hey, maybe Deadpool himself really was in charge all along.
Roll credits. We're done here.
Number 9, Max Payne 3.
Here I was about to execute this poor bastard like some dime store angel of death.
There was considerable pressure on Rockstar to deliver a game that would not only live up to Remedy's previous 2 third-person shooters, but also be a commercial success. By pumping $105 million into the project that was meant to be released way back in 2009, they ensured that the series would carry on with its exceptional dark tone, but left themselves needing to sell 4 million copies just to break even.
Then again, what did I expect? These were the kind of people who went to nightclubs in helicopters.
While an aggressive marketing strategy eventually allowed them to hit that mark, Rockstar greatly overestimated the game's sales projections, resulting in a lot of unsold copies of the game ending up in bargain bins everywhere.
I guess they call it trickle-down economics.
That's funny.
Number 8, Red Dead Redemption.
Bill Williamson! Come out here right now!
If Max Payne 3 was a high-cost gamble that didn't exactly pay off, then this open-world western is the one that absolutely was worth the hefty price tag. Selling 13 million copies, Rockstar comfortably recouped the estimated $80 to $100 million budget and created one of the best games ever in the process.
You implore me. You always were one for fancy words.
They clearly used every second of the 5-year development cycle to craft a beautifully diverse world full of fascinating characters and plenty of Wild West machismo. With a sequel reportedly on the way, fingers crossed, expect the Red Dead universe to get even bigger and better.
Well, that sounds very fun, Mr. Marston. Quite heroic, just like in those penny dreadfuls my brother used to read.
Number 7, Too Human.
Die like heroes, brother! Our lives go on!
From the premise alone, you can understand why this action RPG, taking a sci-fi angle on Norse mythology, was plagued with nearly a decade in development hell. During that time, it racked up costs of 60 to 100 million over 3 separate consoles, yet the end product on the Xbox 360 was a mediocre game that looked okay but ultimately was too short and boring to play.
She's beautiful.
She's a Valkyrie! Come to take Isborg to Valhalla!
The nightmare didn't end with the game's release, however. Epic Games, developers of the engine on which Too Human was built, won a protracted lawsuit that required Silicon Knights, the developer, to pay $4.5 million and destroy all unsold copies of Too Human. A setback which, as you can probably guess, eventually led to the company's bankruptcy in 2014.
It's a good day to die.
You always say that.
It always is.
Number 6, Shenmue.
Yeah, Ryo Hazuki, I'm here for my ticket.
Despite being the 4th best-selling game for Sega's Dreamcast, this revolutionary title is a notorious commercial flop. Although some of its touted $70 million budget went towards the sequel, the 1.2 million copies were nowhere near enough to make the most expensive game ever made, at the time, profitable.
$70 million. That's around £46 million at the current exchange rate.
Its slow and often mundane approach deterred many players, but the introduction of features like QuickTime events, a day-night system, and an interactive world imagined with such impressive-looking graphics, again for the time, left such an impact on those who bought it that the relatively tiny sum of $6.3 million was crowdfunded to support the upcoming 3rd installment of the series.
3 will be the story you have waited for, but this Kickstarter will be real success.
Number 5. Final Fantasy VII. The legacy left by this legendary title is still felt by contemporary gamers, but it didn't come easy. $45 million went into the development, and $100 million was allocated for marketing a JRPG that was one of the first to convincingly penetrate the North American market.
We were able to use many high-end machines and work with a staff of approximately 100.
Square's move to 3D and the elevation of production values was lapped up around the world as 2.3 million copies were sold in just 3 days. Surprisingly, for a game regularly labeled as the best ever, developers were forced to leave out several planned events to meet a tight release date. Those exclusions apparently made no difference to fans, and it went on to sell 11 million copies.
They said it couldn't be done in a major motion picture. They were right. Final Fantasy VII.
PlayStation.
Number 4. Star Wars: The Old Republic.
All you have built here, all you hope to control, it falls apart as easily as a human life.
BioWare had already proven that they could handle one of the greatest media properties ever when they released Knights of the Old Republic in 2003, and as such, they were trusted with an investment of $200 million from EA to make this subscription-based MMORPG.
I promise you'll be well compensated. You can discuss the details with the Watcher.
They created a game of immense scale and depth. Hey, it contained 1,600 hours of story content, yet still faced some criticism for getting muddled between an MMORPG and a Mass Effect-style experience.
It sounds very noble.
Yes, cowing the masses is a complex art.
Although it did require the move to a free-to-play model to reinvigorate interest in the game, it has been regularly expanded, and in 2014, it was still earning $165 million a year.
Once you play Star Wars: The Old Republic, it's pretty hard to go back to other MMOs.
Number 3. Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2.
Remember, no rushing.
Following the first Modern Warfare title selling 17 million copies, Activision could happily throw money at the sequel without worry of it ever being a failure. The development costs were relatively modest at just 40 to 50 million, but they put a staggering 200 million into marketing the FPS titan around the world.
Hello? You get Modern Warfare 2 yet?
Of course, yeah, I got it at Walmart like yesterday.
Featuring a refined, almost flawless online multiplayer suite and a new Spec Ops mode, 5 million copies were sold in a day, and despite the airport massacre controversy, it went past 1 billion in sales in just a few months. The series has grown tired since this juggernaut success, but where can it really go when it's clearly peaked?
I've heard there's over 20 million people doing it now, so it's safe to say that everyone is doing it.
Number 2. Destiny.
Destiny is shaping up to be the most expensive video game ever created, as Activision Blizzard is planning to spend a whopping $500 million on its development and promotion.
The $500 million figure bandied about by Activision CEO Bobby Kotick is monstrous, but is perhaps slightly misleading. All that cash is not just for development, neither is it solely for the first game in the franchise. These funds will lay the foundations for a 10-year plan between Activision and Bungie as they iterate on their FPS MMO hybrid.
Masters, you asked me about raids. Destiny has a raid. It's going to be the most difficult challenge that we've ever thrown at our community.
Expansions like the Taken King have already improved critical reception, addressing the off-malign story, quest system, and bosses through feedback from their reported 25 million registered players. Reliable sales figures are always hard to come by, but with that many players on board, it's likely that Destiny is another billion-dollar franchise.
The darkness is coming back. We will not survive it this time.
Before we reveal our top pick, let's have a look at some honorable mentions.
We're not able to get ourselves in beyond this point, sir. Might you be able to...
Number 1, Grand Theft Auto 5.
It was a blockbuster debut that would make any Hollywood executive jealous, except you couldn't see it on the silver screen, but rather on the small screen.
This open-world title offers limitless possibilities, especially if you're running a mod or two, and so it was inevitably going to leave a sizable hole in Rockstar's pockets.
How much does it cost you to produce this game, Grand Theft Auto?
A lot.
Just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, we don't actually talk about those numbers, but we do say in our filings tens of millions of dollars.
With a reported cost of $265 million, it dwarfed the $100 million budget of its older sibling and similarly obliterated it in pretty much every statistic you could think of. Benefiting from releases over 2 generations of consoles, 65 million copies have been sold. And although free DLC likely eats into their $2 billion worth of revenue, the online mode is still a constant money-making machine. Its numbers are often compared to that of Hollywood's biggest budget projects, and rightly so, because its carnage frequently outdoes its Hollywood counterparts. Do you agree with our list?
Yes!
Woo! What massive budget games have you played?
That's all I got today. But it's early yet. Give me a couple more days. There'll be more.
For more top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Let me remind you that my website got 15 million hits the weekend we announced.
1,000,001? 1,000,002?